My next guest is forever interwoven into the fabric and legacies of the Indianapolis 500. Look, he took a passion for that event and built an Emmy Award-winning Hall of Fame career around it. Now, Paul Page's resume isn't just limited to Indy. It includes a myriad of marquee events and a variety of sports. But Indy was and continues to be that shining beacon for Paul Page. And I cannot tell you how pleased I am to welcome him into the wind tunnel. P Square, how you been?
Hey, Jack, it's so good to be on with you. Good to see you again.
Hey, listen, consider the alternative, right?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. At our age, yes.
All right. Just a short while ago, you finally finished your book. I know that this has been a passion and something that you have quite honestly labored over for, well, at least the 10 years that I know of.
Yeah, exactly.
Tell me a little bit about Hello, I'm Paul Page, and it's race day in Indianapolis.
Well, I hope it's something that everyone will enjoy. What I wanted to do is two things. The last really good history of the 500 was written by Al Blemker, and it was called 500 Miles to Go. And that ended in 59. So since my first race time at the track was 1960, I decided to carry the history forward as well as my own stories. So the history became the frame that we were building the tale on. But at the same time, we were being able to attach to each of those years stories that I would enjoy. And they're not kiss and tell stories, even though I wanted to do the dirt on you. I didn't do it. But no, it's fun. And I think everybody I've talked to that's read it really enjoys it.
Well, I would read it, but I'm cheap.
Yes, I know. Well, yeah. Stay cheap. I need the money.
That's true. Hey, Paulie, look, we all know the stories if, we've worked with you, but a lot of my listeners don't, that you kind of converted a passion as a fan into a career. How did it all get started?
Well, it's a story that the book calls, which, by the way, is called Hello, I'm Paul Page. It's race day in Indianapolis.
Available on Amazon. I mean, I'll
Amazon, Barnes and Noble, maybe
right.
Even your bookstore. Okay, so when I went to my first Indy 500 in 1960, I didn't want to go. I lived in the North Shore of Chicago at Fort Sheridan, Illinois. We were a military family. And my parents said, no, you've got to go to Indianapolis. Your great uncle Harry wants you to come to the race. He wants to show you the 500-mile race. I'm like, no, come on. In fact, the only race I'd really seen to that point was a Formula One race when we were stationed in Germany. And I said, no, come on. They only turn left. I don't want to see that. And once they took me, the race hadn't even started. And I was sold on the Indy 500 just because of the crowd and the ceremonies. And it just sucked me in. And of course, that race was the great battle between Rathman and Ward, which Jim Rathman won. So from the moment I left that track, my passion was to be involved in some way or another. And it turned out in high school that I had kind of a knack for public speaking and was part of the campus radio program that was on the Waukegan station, WKRS. And so when I got out of the Army, I come to Indianapolis and I again, you name it. I was a gopher at Patrick Racing for George Bignotti. And Sid was at a station that I ended up working at, Sid Collins, as a newsman. And he, that was a giant figure, as you well know. And so one day I did an interview with a soapbox derby winner for newscast. And I get back to the station, I radioed the thing in, it's already been on the air. And Sid is standing in the hallways. I mean, this is the great man who created the Indianapolis Motor Speedway Radio Network. He's in the hallway and he's got his arms folded and he looks at me and shakes his head and says, "That is the worst interview I have ever heard." Oh my God. You imagine how that felt? It was like, that really put you in the trash can right there. But then he took me back in one of the unoccupied studios and started to teach me how to interview. And then he'd go on to other things. He did his sports show. He was a sports director there at 6 o'clock when I was in the studio to do the news for the dinner hour for Lou Palmer, who was the other announcer and also involved in the 500 network. And he'd always say, though, at the end, nah, we don't have a place for you on the radio network. Until one year he asked me to come down the station, Jerry Baker and I, and he comes in and says, this 74, because they've extended the pits and everything at the Speedway after the 73 race, you're going to be in the North pits. I'm like, oh. And Baker and I both got out in the parking lot. We were so cool in front of him, but in the parking lot, whoa! And then Sid took me under his wing and mentored me and told me he wanted me to be his replacement. So that's where it started. And of course, when ABC Sports went live, that's when I was able to join you and the gang. And I think we did some awesome racing coverage, especially with Bobby and Sam in the booth.
I'm glad you brought that up. I agree wholeheartedly with you. I think we put our hearts and soul into the product. And I think one of the reasons, just as you alluded to, was the fact that this wasn't just a job for any of us.
Right.
And
same for you.
I'm saying for any of us. I'll include even a lot of the support staff.
Right.
They grew to have the same passion for the event as all of us do. But I want to circle back because it was one of those, I think, golden television moments, ranking up with Howard Cosell and Don Meredith and Monday Night Football. Bobby Unser and Sam Posey in the booth. How the hell did you keep them under control, Paulie?
Well, I remember one time you threatened to bring me a referee's shirt to be in the booth with them. They were so much fun. Sam would say something. He'd add a little something to the program. And then Bobby would say, no, Sam, that's not right. And then Bobby'd start talking. And he'd talk around, he'd keep talking. And finally, he'd get around to pretty much what Sam said, but now Bobby had said it, therefore it is the truth.
That's right.
And they were great friends. I mean, they knew to a large degree what they were doing. But it's so much fun being in between them, and just it was never a burden. I loved every minute of sitting between those two guys. I had Sam to my left and Bobby to my right, and so the cross came right toward my face. But that was a wonderful period, and I think it was good for the fans. They got a lot of good information. They got a lot of excitement. They got a lot of understanding out of the 500.
And in the meantime, also, this was the period in time when, well, the wheels started to come off the wagon, so to speak, as it applied to IndyCar. I know how I felt. I think I know how you felt. There was a line that was once shared with me by Paul Newman when he said, look, you can't walk the center of the road because you're just going to end up getting hit by traffic coming both ways. And yet ABC and the staff, you, me, everybody included, was asked to do exactly that when they were competing open wheel bodies.
Yeah, we had to do both series.
Yeah.
And that was, and especially with you down in the pits, I don't know quite how you did that, because I know what I endured just trying to research the thing was I was everybody's enemy. You're in favor of that other series. Right. No, I'm not. Yeah. I'm in favor of racing. I'm in favor of the Indy 500. That's my pinnacle. That's what I always wanted to do. But it was, it was really hard. And people were so adamant about what they were saying that when they finally said, no, Paul, you're not going to do the Indy cars, then the 500 group, and you're going to do kart. On one hand, it was a great relief that I wouldn't be caught in the middle anymore. But on the other hand, I was losing the Indy 500, which
your love,
my dream.
Yeah.
And that really hurt. That really did hurt.
Is IndyCar in a good state as we look at it in 2021, Paul?
I think it's in a great state. I really think it's in really good shape. Roger Penske buying the Speedway, that was a humongous step. He is, Tony George was a wonderful person, but he wasn't his grandfather, Tony Hulman. Tony Hulman was a great businessman, well known throughout the country, whereas Tony was like this Indiana guy. And so he couldn't pick the phone up and call the president of RCA or whatever and get his attention. Roger Penske can.
Yeah.
And I think when I attended the news conference that was the announcement, which was like a last minute thing, I realized that Tony really wanted to get rid of it. He was emotionally attached to it, but I think between his conflicts within the board and things like that, he was just tired. And Roger was the right man. Tony approached Roger at Laguna Seca, and Roger was the right man because he not only had all those contacts that Mr. Holman had, he had the same passion for the place that Mr. Holman and everybody else since then has had. And so that was a good placement, I think. And I think he'll continue to do very well by it. I mean, how horrible his first year, he can't have anybody in the stadium. And this year he could have like 40%, which, by the way, despite being 40%, was the loudest I've heard that crowd in a long time. They really cheered that. That was a great race. They cheered that on. So Roger gets his way next year, but he's getting older too.
All right, let's leave the corner of 16th and Georgetown for just a minute, because as I said, you parlayed that foundation into a lot of pretty wild assignments, some of which I was joined at the hip with you. Let's go back to Winter X and super modified shovel racing, shall we?
Were we not awesome in covering that? I mean, here, guys, if I can, I hope I can describe it right, because it's so hard to imagine. It started with groomers on ski slopes, and these guys go up and they groom the trails coming down, but rather than walk down, they put the handle of their shovel in between their legs, sit on the shovel, and they'd slide down, and that turned into a sport. And first X Games, yeah, that's exactly what we did. And I don't think I've never actually asked you what you thought about that. I thought it was really weird, but they were great people, and I had a ball doing it. And I think you did too.
I can answer you, and you just said it. As weird as it may be, and look, you know me, I embrace weird. I love weird. I am weird. I live weird. But by the same token,
I'm glad you said it.
But by the same token, Paul, and I think this is what all of the sports that we were, fortunate enough to cover, it was the stories, it was the people.
Yeah,
that's what it was all. And I wonder, because you have done so much from Olympics on down, what outside of racing for a moment, what's your golden moment?
Oh, that's really hard, Jack. That's a good question. I truly enjoyed hosting the America's Cup, but that was good, but it was routine. You're right. I mean, I did the Rubik's Cube World Championship in Budapest, and I got a lot of international travel out of that. And of course, 4th of July at the Nathan's hot dog eating contest. I was the first guy to do that. Now it's a 4th of July staple. I think probably the moment outside of racing did come at the America's Cup. Just to write the opens for that is the same as I worked so hard on the opens for Indy. That was enjoyable, and I think I was up to the task and that I did it well. So that would be my next one.
Well, I appreciate you taking a little time out of your semi-retirement to visit with an old friend. It is Hello, I'm Paul Page, and it's race day in Indianapolis. It's available.
Wait a minute. Hold on, Jeff.
You got it. You show it to the people.
Wait a minute.
There you go. And it is available on Amazon, with local bookstores, Barnes and Noble. And listen, it's always a pleasure to catch up with you. My best to your family, and I'm still waiting. I check the mail every day. I sent you my book, and I needed the money too.
Oh, so I got to send you one too. All right, I can do that. I'll do that. For my old buddy, you bet I will do that. Absolutely.
Paul, it's my pleasure. You take care and have a great time.
Thanks, Jackie. See you later.